Good evening. I love that my inspiration for doing these little online short lesson things. I don't have a plan. Like I have a concepts, and then what's funny is that I get into conversations with people about guitar and playing the guitar and approaches to the guitar, and then I come up with a format for a lesson. And this little tidbit here that I'm going to give you just came out of a conversation I had with my friend Kevin at a coffee shop, and I was trying to explain to him the concept without a guitar, and it just doesn't really work. As you may know, like trying to talk to somebody about an instrument that is equally as visual as it is sonic sometimes is difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a couple of warm-up exercises that I do to just before I play, before I practice, before I play a gig, before I rehearse for my ensembles or anything like that. I usually just run through this a couple of times in 3 different ways, and the third way I actually just kind of worked on today, so it might be a little rough in the lesson, but hopefully you get the gist of it. These little warm-ups are used in one position. I don't really see the necessity in moving them around because the pattern eventually will become the same, and the beautiful thing about the guitar is that it carries patterns very well. You can move stuff here, you can move stuff there, and it's kind of the same fingering. But what we'll be working on this evening or today or whenever it is that you happen to take a look at this is going to be on the 8th fret, working out of C major. These exercises are diatonic, so you're not really going to venture out of the key structure at all for any of these notes. Everything's going to stay relatively tonal to the key of C, or if you wanted to practice it down on 3rd fret in the key of G, that's fine too. We'll be working out of the C major scale box shape that hopefully most of you know. If not, this is what it looks like and sounds like. One of the very first major scales I ever learned was in that. And the great thing that my guitar teacher told me before I actually started working this into my repertoire is that it's those very simple things that we've learned so early on in our career as a guitarist. For me, at least, I've been playing for about 15 years, that now have something new to them that you can attach these concepts to, which is just the beautiful thing about any instrument or anything that you're passionate about is hopefully with every year that you play or every year that you're digging into something as awesome as the guitar or theory or music or anything like that, is that something new pops up and you're surprised and you're intrigued by your instrument again and by the concepts that are involved in it. So I'll give you the fingering for this scale if you're not familiar with it. We'll be starting on the 8th fret on C with our 2nd finger, and the fingering goes 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. And if you were to end on the octave, you would obviously end on your 2nd finger, and then the same thing descending fingering wise. So 2, 1. So the same thing happens when you're descending pattern wise. You're just kind of reversing the pattern. So 2, 1, 4, 2, 4, 3, 1, 4, 3, 1, 4, 2, 1, 4, 2. And you're back to your root. So these exercises are in 3rds, 4ths, and 6th. 6th being the newest one that I added as of this afternoon, a few hours ago. So it's still a little rusty as far as its smoothness, but conceptually it works. And the great thing about these exercises is they're not meant to be done super fast. Like it's not a race. It's more of an awareness of the relationships between the intervals. So what we'll do is we'll start with And all you're doing is basically working within the key of C, working through each pitch in the scale, and it's related to the third above it. So for the first part of it, I'm going C to E, which is a third, D to F, E to G, F to A, G to B, A to C, B to D, and C to E again. So now I'm back to the octave when I get there, and then I'm actually ascending to another through another octave. So what the purpose of this exercise is to just get you more familiar with where these third relationships relate to the fretboard, and it's also a nice little warm up if you're just bored and sitting around the house. The thing is that the fingering for these isn't set in stone. You can do whatever's comfortable for you based on your familiarity with the keyboard. The great thing about these exercises is that the fingerings aren't set in stone. They're more just something to do to help you get more familiar and comfortable with the fretboard. So the way that I'm playing them isn't a right or a wrong way. It's just what's comfortable for me. There are a couple of little shifts in there that happen that I play in a certain way that you may find easier after having run through it a couple of times, that you're like, this works better for me. That's great. Do that. So moving on to the fourths. The fourths are pretty easy because they're all stacked. The only issue that's going to come up is the transition between the F and the B, because keep in mind we're diatonic to the key of C. All the stuff is relating to that. So your interval from a fourth from F to B is actually a tritone. It's not a perfect interval. So you'll have to shift your hand to kind of be more comfortable with that. It happens twice. It happens here on the 8th fret on the A string to the D string on the 9th fret, and then it happens again on the 10th fret on the G string, and then here on the 12th fret on the B string. You can bar this pattern, but in an attempt to create more dexterity with your fingers while you're practicing barring, try to get as much separation between the notes as possible, because it's very easy to get overlapped so that it's almost like you're playing chords, which kind of sounds cool, but what you're looking for with this exercise is separation. Again, you'll notice a shift when you get up to the G string, that your intervals of the fourths move to this shape, almost like a D shape. So those two fourths intervals, including back to the F to the B, that tritone, are going to not be a barred pattern for your finger, and you'll see that when you get to that when you get to the D that's here on the G string going to the G, that it's not barred, because you'd be playing an F sharp, which is a major third. You'd be playing D to G, then E to A, then that F to that B, and then you're back to the stacked barred pattern. Separate, and then you're back to the barred. Separate, and you're back to the root. So those are the fourths. Pretty easy. Again, don't do it fast at first. Just get comfortable with the fingering and the transition between how your fingers move in between the intervals. Now I move on to the sixth. The sixth are tricky because they involve string skips, which a lot of times most of us don't practice. And it's a really, really great habit to get into, especially between the pinky and the ring finger, because those are the two weakest fingers on the hand, because they're attached here with some ligaments that actually don't allow for as much separation as the thumb, index, and middle finger. So with the sixth, again, this will be a little bit slower than the other ones just because this is relatively new to me even, but hopefully I'll be able to play it smoothly enough for you to kind of figure out what I'm doing fingering-wise. And remember, this is all diatonic to the key of C. We're looking at intervals of a sixth. If you're having trouble or difficulty with those intervals, one thing I would recommend is writing out the notes within the C scale, C all the way through the octaves, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then just counting what pitches are sixths apart from each other, so that when you see them on the fretboard, you know that you're going from C to A, and then D to B, and then E to C, and then F to D. That all those intervals are a major sixth away from each other. And that will hopefully help you retain what you're supposed to be playing. And then when you associate what you've written out with what you're looking at on the fretboard, it's going to help you remember where those notes actually are in relationship to the fretboard. So here's the sixth, relatively slow. So that's 2 octaves up to the 17th fret, and remember this is my root. And the reason that I shift into those positions for those last few is because the stretch from the B, if you're doing it on the B string to the E string, can be a little awkward, but it's also good practice to try that as well. I'll go through it again and show you how that works as opposed to what I just did. That might be easier for some of you. And so what I did is basically when I got to this G here on the B string, I followed the rest of the scale up on that B string and then related the sixth on the E string. So G to E, G to E, A to F, B to G, C to A. I like the that pattern a little bit better. It's just it's a little easier to get to than this. You don't have quite the margin for error, I guess, but it is something to be aware of when you're descending. So from a descending standpoint, if you were to do it in this format, we are starting on the C here on the 17th fret on the G string and the A here on the 17th fret on the high E string. You'll find in the descending pattern that the fingering actually stays pretty static due to how the sixes are actually descending each other. For example, this finger shape, so I'm using my second finger and my third finger, and then I'm transitioning to my second, my first, second, first, second, third, second, third, second, first, second, third, second, third, second, first. And then with this one, it's a little bit different. I'm going first, fourth, second, first, second, first, first, fourth, second, first, second, first, first, fourth, second, back to the C. If you need to go rewind that to hear how I did that, that's fine. But again, do what's comfortable. You might find something that works better. My finger independence isn't the greatest, and I'm actually working on that currently because I do have some issues with my third and my fourth finger not getting used enough, and so they're not quite as strong as my other two, and I can't let those kind of dominate my hand, and you got to try to balance them out. So if you find that you're leaning more towards one particular if you find that you're leaning towards one particular pattern with how you're doing these that leaves some of the fingers out, try to find a way to incorporate them so that you're not just dominating these patterns with just 2 or 3 fingers, but try to get them all involved basically. If you can't, that's fine, but it's just good to help kind of balance the hand out. So those are the 3rd, 4th, and 6th. The second topic that we got on conversation this afternoon was basically working on a 3 notes per string scalar pattern that allows you to explore the notes within a given key without modal function in them. Basically what that means is that you're removing the Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian modes from your thought process while you're doing this, and basically focusing on the notes that are within the given key. And how we do that is if we take the key of G, for example, down here on the 3rd fret, we'll be starting on the lowest possible string that we can to get the lowest possible note available to us on the low E string. But basically it's just choosing a random scale degree to start from on the lowest string, and then working 3 notes per string through each note within the scale. So if we were to take G, for example, like we just did, and say I'm just going to start on the F sharp, but I'm not thinking low Korean mode. I'm thinking F sharp all the way through all the other notes in the key of G. So for example, starting on F sharp here on the low E string, the concept sounds like this. Now you'll notice that my ending note through this pattern wasn't an F sharp. I didn't go F sharp to F sharp like the low Korean mode. I started in F sharp, went through all of the notes within the key of G, and ended on the high E string here on a B, which is diatonic to the key of G, but doesn't have anything to do with the low Korean mode, which technically is where we started. Basically what it's supposed to do is just get you more familiar with the notes that are within the key signature without just relying on the root specifically, like everything revolving around, this, like with everything revolving around this tonality. So it works in any key, and it works on any scale degree within that key. So I could take C, for example, and I'm still within the key of G. I'm not thinking modally, just thinking notes within the key of G, starting on C. And again, starting on the lowest possible note on the lowest string that we can get to. It's not always going to work that way, but it is helpful because it gives you just more notes to actually work through. And the reason we do 3 notes per string is that we're limiting ourselves to actually retaining what notes are available to us within a given key. And sometimes it helps to even say the notes out loud. So say if I just move it and down to a half step to the B, I'll be working through the key of G from B, going B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D, E, and back down. Ending again on that B. This is fun to do with other people who might happen to play your instrument with you, or even possibly a bassist, since the tuning is similar, and you can actually work together in building, harmonies together, or harmonic scales and ascending thirds and things like that. It's kind of fun. Or you can just sit down and shout out chord tones to each other in a given key. Again, remembering to stay diatonic. If you get out of the diatonic element of it, it can end up getting a little messy, and it's not necessarily wrong. It's just helpful, especially with flat keys, which tend to be a little bit of a difficulty, at least for me, and maybe for a handful of other guitarists. When you see the key of A flat, it can be a little daunting. B flat, maybe not so much, and E flat are a little bit more common, but like A flat or D flat or even F sharp major, even sometimes B major, can look a little awkward. And so if you actually work in those keys, and say we take the key of A flat, and I'm just going to start on the D flat, try to start as high as possible again, and say the notes out loud. So just say we do it in A flat, I'm going to start on the D flat. Now let's start on the E flat, and remembering that in A flat we've got A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, and then back to A flat. So I'm going to start on E flat in the key of A flat, and I'll say the notes to help me kind of retain where that is, and I'm going to start up here on the 11th fret. So we've got E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D flat, E flat, F, G, F, G, A flat. And back on the E flat. So yeah, hopefully all of that makes sense. I hope this was informative. And if you have any questions or thoughts or anything, please feel free to contact me. I'll leave my email address up at the end of this video. Thank you very much.